Um, Let me digress for a moment so you don't think this is an endless story about the racetrack. And go back to a poem of my teachers by way of suggesting what one eventually comes to if you believe in the process of art as cleansing and redemptive. There's a poem of Mr. Warren's called I'm Dreaming of a White Christmas. And if my faculties weren't in such a state of accelerated deterioration, I would have remembered to bring it and read it to you. But the poem begins with a recollection of the poet I think the poem begins, no, not that door, never. And continues with, but entering saw. And the poet has gone up in the house, into the attic of the house where he lived as a child, and sees a Christmas tree of its leaves long since denuded. It's evidently a tree that's 60 years old. And if we take that tree as an equivalent, say, of the hands dispensing those disembodied hands, and the poet's reluctant to look away from the tree, but finally does, and sees sitting in two rocking chairs, two figures, one of whom he, closer scrutiny reveals, has no eyes, and whose skin has rotted away. And one of them is his mother, dead now for 30 or 40 years, and the other is his father. And their eyes stare at what would have been their eyes, stare at what eyes would have seen if eyes still could see. And he's looking around and he sees another chair that would have belonged to his older brother, and one to his older sister, and then he sees his little chair. And then he sees that there are presents under this dead tree. But the presents are all wrapped up and still shiny. And he's thinking, I'm going to look into that and see what my present is. And then he hears his dad's voice saying, no presents until the other little ones come. And suddenly, he's in Times Square. And he describes the vehicles and jostling with each other like they're logs coming down a big sluice. And he looks over and he sees these, I think I mentioned this image to you once, these old men coming out from the dirty movie houses, and their pants are drying at the crotch, and they're squinting against what remains of sunlight and wishing they'd stayed inside a little bit longer. And then he sees a policeman on a horse, and the policeman's some kind of dago, and then in Bellevue, blocks away, he hears a woman screaming, and she's chained to a bed. And she's screaming because her hair has been hacked short. And suddenly he's in the Bitterroot in Wyoming. And he's remembering, I think, Chief Joseph of the Nez Perce tribe, and finally he says, but tell me, will I never find what was in that present for me under the tree? And then the poem concludes, all the items listed above are parts of the original dream that I am trying to find the logic of. Now, the logic is after the fact. This is the process by which the pain of the past in its pastness is converted to the future tense of joy. By which process he means the poem itself, the act of art itself, which testifies to a unity which is not apparent in any of these seemingly unrelated images. But this process that we undertake as artists is the process by which everything which seems merely fanciful and which, as being merely fanciful, is imprisoned in the past, the pain of the past in its pastness, in its seeming unrecoverability, is once again brought to life and conjugated into the future tense of joy. And I suspect that if you asked the poet, he would say, that's the present under the tree.
Can I tell you something?
Okay.
Some stupid fucking thing. Stupid fucking dream I had.
Okay.
I dreamed last night I was clambering up a fucking creek bank, which is often required of a drunk. It was dark, and I couldn't tell where I was till I cleared the bank and come face to face with Charlie Utter's ugly mug. Now, Charlie's, as usual, on the lookout for Bill. That's his usual too, losing at poker inside the joint we're outside. Where are we, Charlie? I asked, and this could be any fucking place the last number of years. And he said, Jane, don't you know this is the number 10 saloon here in the camp where Bill's gonna fucking get killed soon? Jesus Christ. How do you know, Charlie? I asked him. He said, don't you know, he says, at some point we know these fucking things. Don't you know the world says its fucking name to us? What the fuck? What the fuck do I have to dream about this for? I say to Charlie. Wasn't I miserable enough? Jane, fucking Charlie says to me, don't you know this is the night you couldn't look out for that little girl when you was at Cochran's and Swearingen come in and scared you and you went down to the creek to weep. That's where the fuck you're coming from. And don't you know, he says, this is the night you spirit that child from Cochran's into where our stock was outside of camp, and we watched out on that little girl and sung to her, and you, with the presence of mind to continue the fucking round when I was too fucking stupid. And you said, you would row, 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 and I said, row, row, row your boat. And we had this. Now, Charlie says to me, don't you understand what I'm trying to tell you? Any evenings in your life you made mistakes, remember, where even evenings you was as most ashamed as you ever thought you could ever be, are able to wind up, and don't fucking only remember the middle of the fucking dream. if I wonder why I dreamed that dream. Yesterday, you sent Mose to find me, and I was nearly dead, drowned, drunk. And Mose made me get up, and you and me walked them kids to school. And before I went to sleep, you kissed me.
After Tolliver come and you found Mose to help me.
And Charlie to help me find that little girl. The very night I got scared and run, and the both of us sung around to her, and then you went ahead and kissed me.